Hello everyone, welcome to the session. In this session, we will discuss compiled language and interpreted language. What is compiled language? C, C++, Java, Fortran, C Sharp, COBOL. These are the compiled language. In compiled language, the complete source code is compiled into machine code or bytecode in one go. One go means if you have 100 lines of code, then all 100 lines would be compiled or converted into machine code or bytecode. In case of Java, the source code is converted into bytecode. In case of C, C++, the source code is converted or compiled into machine code. That's why I have mentioned both machine code slash bytecode. One point I have mentioned also, the compilation only successful if there is no issue in the program. If there is some syntax issue, then compilation would not be successful. The compiler would throw the error. What is compiler? The compiler is the one which convert your code into machine code or bytecode. I have mentioned one program here. There are 6 lines. When we compile this code, all 6 lines would be compiled. All 6 lines would be converted into machine code. If there is any issue in any of the line, whether it is starting line or end line, then the compilation would be failed and the compiler would throw an error in the console, or we can say print the error in the console. So the important thing in compiled language, you need to compile the code before you can run your program. Suppose you are writing C, C++ code. After writing your code, you compile your code. After that only you run your code. Same with the Java. One note I have mentioned here, Java is compiled language, but somewhere it is also written it's both compiled or interpreted. When we compile the code, after compilation we get the bytecode, and that bytecode interpreted by the Java virtual machine. That's why in many of the books or uh, content on the internet it is written the Java is compiled language as well as interpreted language. But in actual, it is a compiled language because we compile the code before we execute. And somebody asking you, then you can also explain. You can also say Java is interpret language because JVM interpret bytecode. Now the interpreted language. The example I have mentioned here: JavaScript, Python, PowerShell, Ruby, PHP, etc. In interpreted language, the source code is not compiled or converted into machine code or bytecode in one go. This is the first thing you need to understand. Suppose you have 100 lines in your JavaScript code. JavaScript is interpreted language. So you don't need to compile all 100 lines to start the execution. Translation or compilation and execution is happened on the fly line by line. So this is the actual property of the interpreted language. Program or software which compile or translate and execute the code is called interpreter. Every interpreted language will have the interpreter. How you can install the interpreter? The JavaScript, the browser will have the JS engine which will have the interpreter. Python, the Python virtual machine act as the interpreter. I have did the small 3 lines code to explain few more things. How the execution happen in the interpreted? You don't have to compile all these 3 lines before starting the execution. You can run the execute command to execute this JavaScript code. When you run the execute command, the interpreter will get the first line and compile and execute that line. Then it will get the second line and it will compile and execute the line. Then the third. Again you will run the execute command. Again interpreter will get the first, then again compile, then execute. And same goes on with other lines. Suppose there is some issue in line number 3. Interpreter will run first and second line successfully. When it will run the third line, then it will throw the error that there is some issue with the third line, because the execution happen line by line in interpreted language. That's the reason the interpreted language are a bit slow than the compiled language, because in the interpreted language the compilation happens on the fly, but in the compiled language already you compiled the code then you execute. So the compiled language are a bit faster than the interpreted language. So this is the how the execution happen in the interpreted language. That's all for this session. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.